What does dogs have to do with anything that we're talking about today?
These are scientific experiments. This is what you signed off on. You did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting and evil, what you signed off on, and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this. So the type of science that you are representing, Mr. Fauci, is abhorrent, and it needs to stop.
Okay, so Dr. Fauci has crawled out from under his rock. For those of you who haven't been paying a lot of attention to this, he took his money and ran. He made all that money, millions and millions of dollars, off of forced vaccines, off of all of those interviews, off of getting documentaries, TV shows, Netflix, writing a book. After causing severe damage to the country, to the economy, to the morale of the society, he ran. He retired and has been in hiding, but he's crawled out from under his rock. He slithered his way into the halls of Congress to attend a congressional meeting. The committee on what the hell happened during this coronavirus thing has called him in and asked him some questions, and he was blasted by Republicans. He had to face a lot of the questions that many of us have been asking for years. These Republicans did a great job. Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically, they did a great job in speaking up for the American people who've had these same questions, who've had these same frustrations for the last 4 years. We've endured so much hell because of the policies pushed because of C19, the fascism, the authoritarianism that these people push on our society, the power that these people stole, the money that these people stole, using C19 as a guise to seize money, to seize power. The unvaccinated people were ostracized. These people were shamed. They were bullied. Joe Biden himself got on national TV and talked about how terrible unvaccinated people were. They were ridiculed, mocked on the media. You lost your job. You couldn't travel. All types of stuff. And in addition to the unvaccinated people, the people who ask questions, they were banned from social media. Your YouTube channel will be shut down, kicked off Facebook, kicked off Instagram. They said you are a conspiracy theorist. They said you're spreading disinformation, you're trying to kill people. Why are you spreading lies? If you ask questions, they said, oh, well, we need to do this. We need to stand 6 feet apart. We need to close down businesses. We need to put children in masks, shut down the schools, do all this and that. If you question that, if you said, well, how about this solution instead? They said, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're wearing a tinfoil hat. You're just making stuff up. You have no idea about the science. You have no idea about anything. You just need to shut the hell up and do what the hell we tell you to do. Many people lost their jobs because of this, because a lot of people refuse to fall into this BS. Thousands, tens of thousands of businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, gone forever. Forever. I think it's the hospitality industry, restaurants. About 14,000 of those businesses, small restaurants, gone forever. But where's that money going? That money has gone to the bigger companies. That money that was spent at these local mom and pop shops, that was spent at local clothing stores, that was spent at local eateries, they went to places like McDonald's, they went to places like Amazon, Walmart. So while normies were being crushed, while everyday mom and pop operation, you save all your life to start a business, your business has been doing good for the last 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden they come in and shut you down. Or you're a third generation business owner. Your granddad started this business back in the 1970s. Now you're running it. You're just a local business. All of a sudden you get shut down and that generational business is gone forever. But that money has now gone to Amazon. It's gone to Target. It's gone to Home Depot. Because all of these companies, they were still around. They forced all of these small companies. In my city, I will see local ice cream shops shut down, local burger chains on the same block in the same shopping center. Ice cream shop closed, burger chain closed. Right next to it, McDonald's open, packed. Local clothing store in the same shopping center where Walmart closed down. But Walmart packed from the windows to the walls. So this created the largest transfer of wealth in human history. And nobody's paid the price for it. They had no evidence at all to support what the hell they were doing. So we're going to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan expressing some of our frustrations, confronting Dr. Fauci on this BS, because he's not the only one, but he's one of the primary people who pushed this BS on the country. So let's look at this New York Post article. It's going to highlight some of the key points, some of the quotes. We're going to look at some excerpts from the entire hearing. The hearing was several hours long, so we can't talk about the whole thing, but we're just going to talk about some of the key moments that happened. And I'm also going to add a few of the clips, because seeing it and hearing it versus reading it sometimes is more helpful too. So let's get into it. Former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Dr. Anthony Fauci contradicted several of his past statements from the C19 pandemic when he testified before Congress on Monday. The former top pandemic advisor to two presidential administrations who retired in 2022 after nearly 4 decades at the head of NIAID faced sharp questions about the reversals from Republican members of the House Select Committee on the coronavirus pandemic. Americans were aggressively bullied, shamed, and silenced for merely questioning or debating issues such as social distancing, masks, vaccines, and the origins of COVID, Chairman Brad Wenstrup said in his opening remarks. Fauci, 83 years old. You took the position that you presented the science, in your words, came across as final and as infallible in matters pertaining to the pandemic, the chairman added before he and other Republican panel members recounted those statements. And look at this weasel. Look at this snake. Like I said, he's a slimy serpent that's crawled out from under his rock. So here are some of the excerpts. They have quotes, things that this man has said, which he was trying to run mental gymnastics to justify. In some statements, he outright denied that he even said them. Anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this, Fauci said in a November 28, 2021 interview on CBS Face the Nation. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people can recognize there's a person there. There's a face, there's a voice you can recognize. You see him on television, so it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. That's dangerous. So this is the infamous "I am the science" quote when Fauci sitting at the height of his arrogance, because all of these people had kowtowed to him, give him all this power, all of this authority. So he thought he was King Tony. He's sitting there saying he represents science. So whatever he says, you criticizing anything he says, you're criticizing science. So let's look at this short exchange between him and MTG regarding this quote.
Mr. Fauci, you were quoted on CBS Face the Nation saying it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes, you said you represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes
Again,
or no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no
Yes,
answer.
it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent. Mr. Fauci, you also represent the type of science that where you confess that you made up the COVID rules, including
I didn't hear what you
6
said.
feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You
I
made it
didn't
up
say
as you went.
I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr. Fauci?
I didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But you also told the American people they had to distance by 6 feet. They had to wear masks. But let's also talk a little bit further about the type of science that you represent. NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers, a fact that's been hidden. Let's talk about the fact about, is it right for scientists and doctors getting paid by the American people, government taxpayer paychecks, to get patents where they're paid millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in royalty fees, especially when the NIH and these government agencies, most powerful agencies in our country, are recommending medical suggestions and advice and making up guidelines like 6 feet distancing and masking of children. Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer.
Such a weasel, man. Such a slimy, disgusting snake. It sort of disappeared. I don't recall. Fauci said in a January congressional interview of the social distancing mandate imposed on federal agencies, businesses, and schools. Just an empiric decision that wasn't based on data or even the data that could be accomplished. Now, this is something that I immediately criticized. Immediately. Because it didn't even make sense. Oh, yeah, stand 6 feet apart. And it's going to protect you from the virus. It was ridiculous. Why not 3 feet apart? Why not 8 feet apart? Stand 6 feet apart. We have no evidence to support this, even though there was a lot of arguments going. People were showing, look, I'm going to spray this material from an aerosol bottle under black light, and you can see the droplets going. That doesn't prove that you're protected from a virus by standing 6 feet apart. And I said the reason why this immediately falls apart is because we have something called convection. Air moves. So if you're standing 6 feet from someone, the air is still moving between you. So it really doesn't make a difference. But they ran with it. They took it as a gospel truth. You walking into a store, doctor's office, all these people got arrows and signs on the floor telling you where to stand, which way to walk, like you're freaking cattle or something. Completely ridiculous. But like I said, he got away with it. And we saw MTG confront him on that. When I say it was not based in science, I meant a prospective clinical trial to determine whether 6 feet was better than 3, was better than 10. Yeah, but you didn't say that back in 2020. Back in 2021, you didn't say that. People were looking like fools being herded around like cattle, like I said. It even messed up events like restaurants, graduation ceremonies, stuff like that. Well, we can't have too many people at once. We have to have this 6 feet. We have to spread everybody out. It was so ridiculous that you go to a beach in California during the summer. They had circles on the ground. Okay, you can sit over here. You can sit over here. Just dumb. We had discussions in the White House about that. He acknowledged when asked why the mandate wasn't changed. But the CDC's decision, it was their decision to make, and they made it. So that was another thing that was going on with all of these quote-unquote authorities during this time. It was always past the buck. So if your governor, if your left-wing governor, your dumbass governor made a decision to have you walking around with dirty cloth on your face, thinking it was going to protect you from a virus, they would say, well, it's not my decision, even though I mandated it in the state and I signed off on documents making an executive order forcing y'all to do this. It's not my decision. The CDC said it. Then you confront the CDC. No, well, Fauci said it. Well, Fauci said, no, the CDC made this decision. No, it was the WHO. So they keep passing the buck. Like, who the hell is the governing authority making these mandates? And I say, really, it was the local officials, the governors, who are the main ones to blame for this. And after that, Fauci and the CDC. But these dumbass left-wing governors, they completely bought in. And also they knew that they could use C19s, the shutdowns, wrecking their own economies, and all that to use against Trump during the election because they could wreck their own economy, shut down the economy in California, Nevada, and the Midwest. And they'll say, well, yeah, you lost your job, you lost the business, but it's Trump's fault. And it worked to some extent, and they also use it for justification for changing the election laws, notably in Pennsylvania. But that's a different story. So MTG, she confronted him. We're going to look at this clip here. She confronted him on how he was walking around without a mask, sitting with his friends, having fun, chilling, having a good old time. Governors like Gavin Newsom was at the French Laundry, $1,000 plate restaurant in the middle of the shutdown, no mask, chilling with his friends, while little children and everybody else walking around with masks on. So let's take a look at this clip.
I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Mr. Chairman,
Point of order.
Just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in
Gentlelady will
prison.
suspend.
Let's talk about. Let's talk
Mr.
about
Chairman,
this.
I
I'm
would
reclaiming
move that
my
the woman's
time. I'm reclaiming my time.
Words get taken
I'm
down.
reclaiming my time. This was a time in history where you got to throw out the first pitch at the Washington Nationals baseball game while Americans were forced to stay home and watch such events that they love from at home alone on their televisions. And what a hypocrisy this picture shows. Here you are without your mask, with empty seats everywhere. Remember the cardboard cutout fans? That was one of the most insulting things to Americans, having to watch the games from home where you got to go and enjoy the game and sit right next to people not following the 6 feet of distancing, not wearing your mask, and everyone else was forced to stay home and stop enjoying life. And your science here, your science is displayed perfectly in this picture where children in school were put in plastic bubbles because of your science, your repulsive, evil science.
In March 2020, Fauci said in a 60 Minutes interview, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing protection. So this was before they got to him. He was speaking as an actual person who understands public health at the time. But clearly somebody got to him for him to just reverse course like that. Just like the Surgeon General at the time who worked for Trump. He tweeted that we need to stop wearing masks, but these people were speaking as people who understood infectious disease, these types of diseases. But clearly the politics got in their heads, the left wing got to them, the people who knew that they could make billions of dollars off of this got to them, and all of a sudden they reverse course. All of this is the context of, at the time, 4,000, 5,000 people a day were dying. Fauci said in Monday's hearing, before admitting there was no study that did masks on kids. They had no scientific justification for putting those dirty ass filthy cloths on little children. You have your little baby on the airplane and they said, look, if your 6-month-old isn't stuffed, you don't stuff this dirty sock on his face where he can barely breathe, then you got to get the hell out the plane. We had issues like that all over the country. So another thing that he said that pissed off a lot of people, that ideological bullshit quote. It's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated. Fauci said in an October 2020 audio recording of his biography, Fauci, written by New York journalist Michael Spector. So he made a lot of money out this biography, talking crap about people, saying, look, yeah, these people were talking about freedom of speech. These people talking about rights and all of this. Look, take away their money, take away their jobs, shut down their businesses, and then see how much they care about body autonomy and freedom and all of that crap. Just make them suffer. And this little weasel tried to slither his way out of it. On Monday, Fauci said, that's not what I was referring to. The objections to COVID vaccines were not, in fact, ideological bullshit. And this is a big one right here because this man just straight up lied about the lab leak. We're going to have to look at an extended clip of one of the most heated moments talking about the lab leak just to get the full context of this exchange. So we got Jim Jordan. He gets his moment to confront Fauci and ask Fauci the same questions that many of us have been asking for years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, why was it so important that the virus not have started in a lab?
We don't know where it started, and that's the reason why I keep an open mind. So I don't know what you mean by why was it so important. It wasn't important.
Well, you still don't know where it started? The guys you gave money to figured out in 3 days.
No.
Mr. Anderson said on January 31st, 2020, virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory. The very next day, Dr. Gary said, I don't know how this happens in nature. It'd be easy to do in a lab. And then 3 days later, Shazam, they switch and say it has to be nature. So they figured out
Exactly.
3 days. You still don't know?
No, in fact, if you look at what they were saying, Congressman Jordan, they were saying that it was not a manufactured virus. It still could have evolved out of a lab.
Well, let me read something here to you.
They're not incompatible.
In our study on the censorship of the Biden administration working with big tech, I want to read you a WhatsApp message from Mark Zuckerberg. Can we include that the White House put pressure on us to censor the lab leak theory? So this is a communication on July 16th, 2021. Nick Clegg, Joel Kaplan, Sheryl Sandberg, Mark Zuckerberg. They're certainly feeling the pressure to downplay any lab leak theory and go with the natural origin theory.
Yeah, not only did these guys feel pressure, these guys in charge of these social media companies, they complied. If you got on Facebook, if you got on the old Twitter, the pre-Elon Twitter, if you got on there saying, yeah, what about the Wuhan lab? What about the fact that this lab is only a couple of miles away from this wet market where y'all say disgusting Chinese people were eating bats? This is what they said. Even though they tried to call us racist for saying it came from China, they're the ones who said it was a bunch of disgusting Chinese people in the wet market eating bats. But that's a different story. If we said something about the lab leak theory, we got shut down. They would either give you a warning while deleting your post, or they would just kick you off the app altogether.
Is there a question there?
One's coming. Here's another email to Mark Zuckerberg. It says, subject line, COVID misinformation, Wuhan lab leak theory. In response to continued public pressure and tense conversations with the new administration, we started removing 5 COVID claims, including the lab leak theory. Mr. Zuckerberg responds, this seems like a good reminder that when we compromise our standards due to pressure from an administration in either direction, we often later regret it. Why was it so important the virus not have started in a lab?
Wasn't so important that the virus not. We don't know. We
Well,
know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
Well, what has that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the.
Wait, you can't answer that. Weren't you the presidential advisor for C19? All of a sudden, what does that have to do with me? Oh, I don't know anything about this. What they were saying to Facebook, I don't know anything. Weren't you telling the administration the guidelines? If you would have told them that this shit came from a lab, if you would have been honest with them instead of trying to cover it up to cover your own ass, maybe they wouldn't have pressured Facebook like that. Maybe they wouldn't have tried to suppress people who were saying that it came from the lab. But with your guidance, using you as the face of all of this justification, all of these radical policies, they push this. They kick people off social media. They suppress free speech. So it has a whole lot to do with you, Tony Fauci.
You kept an open mind, Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
What happened in those 3 days? Why did Dr. Anderson and, Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, why did they change their mind in 180 degrees? Because what Christian Anderson says 3 days later, after he said virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory, 3 days later he says the main crackpot theories going around at the moment relate to this virus being somehow engineered, and that is demonstrably false.
Exactly, crackpot. If you say it came from a lab, you're a conspiracy theorist wearing a tinfoil hat. You're a crackpot. You making stuff up. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything about the science.
How did they figure all that out in 3 days, Dr. Fauci?
You can do that.
Still have an open mind.
Well, what they did is that they testified before this committee. What they did, they went back and looked at the sequences and realized that their initial concern was unfounded about that, and it did not look at all like it was manufactured. But as they said in their paper, even though they feel it was more likely,
3 days they figured it out.
That's exactly. You could do that in 3 days. You can scan sequences in a day. You don't need 3 days.
Okay, who's Robert Redfield?
The former director of the CDC.
Dr. Redfield, right? And he was also in the coronavirus task force. Is that accurate?
He was a member of the coronavirus task force.
And here's what he said to this committee. He said, Redfield said that...
Fauci is nervous as hell. He's sitting here for hours, and he's a trained pathological liar. And he's been trained even more probably by CIA or somebody else, but they bring up certain issues, and you can just hear his voice shake, his tone. So now we got to talk about Redfield. So, and this is the discussion Fauci does not want to have.
Fauci and Collins left him out because Redfield suspected that coronavirus had leaked from the Chinese lab. Is that accurate?
Former CDC
director.
He
said that, but that's not true. That is incorrect, Congressman.
Dr. Redfield's lying to the committee
No.
when he sat right where you sat?
When he said that I kept him out, that is an incorrect statement. The roster who was on the phone
was Dr. Redfield in that conference call on February 1st when you had Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary on
such
the call?
a liar.
And the conference call was put together by Jeremy Farrar, so no one kept him out. He said he was kept out because
Did U.S. tax dollars?
You want me to answer the question?
Yeah, I would just wonder why he wasn't on the call. It seems to me the head of CDC, part of the coronavirus task force, which was formed 2 days prior to that call, would have been on the call.
Exactly.
Well, the call was arranged by Jeremy Farrar. You should ask him.
Well, he wasn't on the call because he wasn't willing to play ball. He was going to tell the truth. He wasn't going to participate in this cover-up with Fauci and them funding the Wuhan lab doing gain-of-function research over there, and Fauci and them trying to cover their own ass. CDC director was going to play ball with that, so they had to freeze him out.
Okay. Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
I'm sorry.
Answer the damn
US
question.
tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
Yes, of course. It was a sub-award to the Wuhan Institute.
And who approved that award?
Excuse me?
And who approved that award? What agency approved that award?
National Institute of Allergy and Infectious.
Why can't this man just answer directly? Why does he need Jordan to constantly repeat himself? That's a sign of a liar. When somebody says, huh? Wait, what? Repeat that? Because they need more time to gather their lie. They need to kind of get that knot out of their throat from being so nervous from just sitting there conjuring up lie after lie. And look at him talking about the National Institutes. Say me! You, Fauci, are the one who approved this money. Why are you answering the question in such an indirect way?
Disease.
Your agency approved that, right?
Yes, it did.
So it was you.
Does that have anything to do with this downplaying of the lab leak theory?
No,
Nothing to do with it.
nothing.
Wow.
Do you,
Wow.
do you agree that there?
So that's enough for that. I'll add the link for the entire hearing, probably these links from the clips we looked at in the description box. So if you want to, you can look at the entire thing. But he just said it. We funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. They were doing gain-of-function research. We were doing it in the United States. We were shut down. A couple of years later, we said, look, we need to continue this research. We can't do it in the United States based on new regulations. So let's just do it over there in China. Let's give U.S. taxpayer dollars to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and let's continue our gain-of-function research. So Jim Jordan said, okay, the virus comes from a lab that you were funding doing your research in China. All of a sudden, you run all these cover-ups, hiding information, freezing out certain people who were going to say that it was from the lab. And you're saying that you funding the lab had nothing to do with you downplaying those lab leak theory. You knew that you funded this research in the lab. And when the virus comes out, you say, well, no, it wasn't from a lab. If you're saying it was a lab leak, you're lying, you're conspiracy theories. Had nothing to do with that. Like I said, Fauci is a straight-up lying sack of shit. And like MTG said, he needs to be in prison. Full-blown orange jumpsuit, not the country club prisons. I'm talking about solitary confinement. Crimes against humanity. But let me know what you guys think about this. What was your impact? How did it impact you? And how do you feel today about the coronavirus? Because people like Trump and Biden, they're not talking about it a lot. They're not bringing it up. They want us to just move on. Just move on. It was years ago. We destroyed your lives, but it was years ago. Just move on. Let's talk about something else. Yeah, we were authoritarian. We changed all the election laws. We had you looking like fools. We herded you around like cattle. But let's just move on and forget about it. So let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know how it impacted you. Leave me your thoughts below. Share the video. Thanks for watching.